So I'm reading an article written by Tom Wooten about how there are advantages in bipolar, and it's no longer about if there are advantages, but why there are advantages and how there are advantages. And if you've been watching any of my videos, I've talked quite a bit already about my own personal experience and how I feel that a lot of it is advantageous, and also why that is. So for me, it's not a question of if personally. So it's only been recent in actual scientific inquiry that there are advantages. And I guess maybe it's not that recent, because there's that book called A First-Rate Madness, and one of the people featured in this article actually wrote that book, and I have that book and I've never read it. I'm not sure why. I think it just seems so wordy, and I guess all books are actually wordy, but just the formatting and everything, it just didn't jive with my brain, so I never got that interested in it. Tom wrote an article about these distinguished panelists who gave a presentation in their research about their research into why people with bipolar disorder tend to exhibit advantages in some parts of their life. So the fact of the matter is that they do exhibit advantages in some parts of their life, and they're trying to figure out why. If they want to look for some possible hypotheses, they can watch my videos, or I might actually contact them and just tell them. The First Lady, Cherie Johnson, says people with bipolar disorder tend to work harder towards their goals and refuse to give up long after normal people do. And well, why could this be? One thing I can think of off the top of my head is that maybe people with so-called bipolar disorder have goals that are more in alignment with the actual universe and not just personal, greedy little goals. And even if their goals are maybe a bit more self-centered, they might actually have very positive intentions with their goals. So it could be the intentions as well, because there's no point in working super hard towards complete meaninglessness. So I feel people with bipolar disorder often have a connection to a meaning greater than their own personal ego gratification, or maybe they do connect with meaning towards their ego personal gratification, but they actually feel meaning in that, versus most people have just a sense of meaninglessness in their lives. So I feel people with the bipolar disorder connect with meaning, some kind of meaning. And then you think, well, why do they connect with meaning? Well, to me, there's an ego scrambling process of some sort. It weakens the ego. It can actually manifest as apparently appearing as a stronger ego, but to me that's actually just connecting with passion behind the meaning of something. Even if it's maybe a personal thing, but a person becomes way more passionate because they've connected with something in themselves that's beyond the ego, fear, defense mechanisms that thinks, oh, I can't do this or I shouldn't do this. So one also connects with that ability, that energy, because that ego structure has lost its hold and its grip. And since a person, I've talked about before, isn't thinking in this self-reflexive, destructive, circular way, it's not wasting that energy. It's like if a person were thinking that way, the water just goes around the paddles and sort of spreads everywhere, and it's a waste of energy. It dissipates energy, and a person is able to channel energy in a certain way, perhaps because there's more meaning and passion behind that. So a person might actually seem more like they have more of an ego, but they don't necessarily. It could be whatever the energy is that is driving them is creating that manifestation of themselves as passionate and, not going to put up with someone's crap, and they're just going to go about doing what they know they need to do. And a lot of people, they say with bipolar disorder, succeed in, say, management, because they don't have that ego sense so much, and they are sensitive to other people, so they know what they need to do in order to empower people and get them to be motivated and do the work. So it's a sensitivity to that. And this lady also is wondering, like, why people are more successful. Well, again, the energy that's driving the success is something beyond personal ego success. It's usually for a greater something. It might not even be, the person might not even have the intention of the greater something, but their energy is from that perspective, so it naturally gets channeled in that way, which can then be perceived as success. And they talk about it in terms of impulsivity as well. And for some reason, people that take immediate action are seen as impulsive just because they don't have this noise in their prefrontal cortex blocking them from actually taking immediate action. They're seen as impulsive. And I wouldn't necessarily say that. They're just not abstracting about reality as much as they are acting in the field of reality, which would also lead to more so-called success. The next person, Terrance, studies the link between creativity and bipolar disorder. And I've already talked about how, to me, a person in mania is restored to their childlike, energetic, learning consciousness state, and so it's just naturally creative, and we're born naturally creative, and then it's programmed out of us, and then certain people go in and out of that state, and then it's said to be some mysterious thing. When we have this innate capacity within us, people with a so-called mood disorder are the ones that have it even more so, because what happens is when the ego gets scrambled by this energy, when the ego is scrambled, we're naturally more creative. Or when the ego is temporarily suspended, then we're naturally more creative. And then a person is said to have a mood disorder because when they're coming down from that, or when the ego is sort of rematerializing and getting in the way, one can be kind of grumpy because they're losing that state. So I don't think a person necessarily has a disordered mood as much as one's going in and out of this creative state, and it's a little bit disorienting. If you were in the middle of painting some amazing work, and then all of a sudden that was going away, and then somebody comes in and says, "Hey, it's time for dinner," you might get kind of grumpy. The book A First-Rate Madness, written by Nasir Gamay, talks about the surprising link between mental illnesses and leadership. You gotta be kind of crazy to think you can lead people to do something. So that's one of the benefits of crazy, and maybe being a little bit delusional and thinking that you can actually change the world. Now, the ego mind doesn't think, oh, I can change the world. It's just thinking about what's for dinner. So something else has to come into play, which is the weakening of the ego, which is usually attributed to a mental illness, because one is no longer just thinking in linear terms of being a functional cog in the machine of society. One is looking at different ways of being and different ways of expressing oneself and different ways of thinking and possibilities. The ego mind doesn't think in possibilities. So I really don't feel that mental illnesses are illnesses per se, as much as they just appear like illnesses because one isn't functioning the way that we've been conditioned to function. It's just like being impotently maladjusted. Dr. Martin Luther King talked about being creatively maladjusted. Well, if we aren't able to be creatively maladjusted, sometimes we get maladjusted by the universe. And if we don't understand what's happening and don't know how to harvest it and harness it and move toward it and get in alignment with it and surf the wave of the universe, if the universe energy is coming in and directing us and guiding us and animating us, and we're used to our little ego consciousness animating us, well, that's like going from learning to drive a car to being expected to take a rocket to the moon without any lessons. So it's quite difficult. Just because somebody sits inside a rocket ship doesn't make them an astronaut. And just because a person who is in touch with that energy of the universe and doesn't know how to navigate doesn't make them mentally ill. It's just not knowing how to operate that way. And then unfortunately, usually we get funneled into a chemical prison or a chemical ego band-aid when the ego is losing its hold on us. And that's one of the purpose of this energy coming in, is for the ego to lose hold on us. So we will look around, so we will do things differently, so we will alter the structure of society because it's not fair and it's not just, and there are so many people suffering, and we don't realize that the people that are suffering are us. And he also asks why bipolar is associated with so many positive outcomes while at the same time causing such devastation. Well, if you think about it, bipolar again is a suspended ego state. So when one's in that state, one is not thinking about the consequences to oneself. It's all or nothing. It's like how Stephen Kotler talks about somebody riding a huge wave and surfing, and if they make just the slightest error, they could die. Well, when this energy wave of the universe comes in through somebody and is animating them, it's not animating them as in the normal consciousness, as in, oh, well, I better think about this and ponder about this for 10 years before I do it. No, it's action now. And each little micro decision leads to the next. And it's not a decision made by the ego consciousness, it's made by the universe. And it's almost like the universe is making us surf its wave in daily life. And some of us surf it, even though we've never done it before. And some of us fall flat on our face, and some of us die, and some of us break into a million pieces and have to be put back together again. And that's the thing, is it is a catastrophic thing. It's not this safe little thing, and we've created these little safe lives for ourselves with our little ego mind directing us and keeping us safe, and that energy comes in through us and channels through us, and we don't have a choice. It's going to make us surf that wave, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's luck of the draw or what, but it's just a wave. That wave doesn't necessarily care about if it devastates our ego life. It's actually trying to break up our ego life. So even if it is a catastrophic failure, it's still a success for the universe because it's broken up an ego into a million pieces. And it's unfortunate that so many of us just end up medicalized for the rest of our lives, but you know, if we could really see what was happening, even if we did crash into a million pieces, we would begin the process of putting ourselves back together again, just like Humpty Dumpty. Bipolar is kind of like Humpty Dumpty syndrome. And Tom works on the how aspect of how to create positive outcomes for people with bipolar. And he offers a course, and he does some really great work. And what I would like to work on, and I already am working on it, and I have been for quite some time, is I feel there is a universal energy behind the process. And I say that because when a person starts experiencing these waves of energy and this cycle from up to down, it's not something a person can necessarily control. And Tom talks about that, and he talks about how we can't control it, so we may as well learn how to understand it and work with it. And so in that way, it's a process of the universe. It's something like we're all a part of the universe. We're not separate from it. We're in it. We are it. And so this energy comes in and animates us in different ways. It doesn't change us into some other species. No, it animates us as human beings in ways that human beings act at one time or another in their life. So it doesn't really add anything necessarily new to the spectrum of possible behaviors per se. Maybe the delusion stuff, but that's definitely part of the learning process, because even children have so-called delusions and aren't quite sure about how reality works and have unfounded fears, just like that happens again in bipolar disorder, in mania and psychosis. And to me, that kind of proves the whole, not proves, but it's just another element that the ego is suspended or kind of deleted or totally messed, because a person goes back to thinking there's monsters in the closet, which is sort of the pre-ego state of a young child. So it's reality testing all over again. And it's like wanting us to learn. This energy wants us to learn. It is learning itself. It's learning about itself. It is itself. It's a self-learning process about itself. And so it sort of throws everything one knows for a loop. Everything. From gravity to, should I just pee on the floor, to anything. So it just opens up that entire spectrum of possibilities, of degrees of freedom of human behavior and possibility. And unfortunately, not always does that lead us to do the best things, but sometimes it does lead us to do good things. But the same with the ego consciousness. People in ego consciousness can do bad things or they can do good things. So this other state of consciousness isn't necessarily different in that it can produce so-called bad or so-called good, which is actually an ego judgment. In that state, if there was nobody to really look on and judge, I don't know if you wouldn't necessarily say a kid peeing on the floor is bad. Like, it's annoying, you have to clean it up, but kids pee on the floor. Well, maybe adults who forget about that rule pee on the floor too, and they forget about a lot of rules. And maybe we do need to forget the rules of society and create some new ones from scratch. I think that's what this energy is getting at a little bit, and that's the part that I am curious about focusing on, is more about the relational aspect of these states of consciousness, how it's trying to get us to be animated in certain ways, and what could that mean. So it's one thing to say, oh, a personal person is successful and they have bipolar temperament, bipolar consciousness, and look how successful they are. Well, you can look at it as personal success, and I feel this energy is coming on in order to animate a person to be relationally successful. So to bring out the success in others, to have certain spontaneous social behaviors that will alter the fabric of society. So a person that's a leader and they happen to be bipolar and they're successful, well, they're not successful in a vacuum necessarily. If they're leading a company or something like that, they're having an effect on the people that are working for them and with them. So to me, that's relational. So they must have somehow harnessed this energy. And I feel that the energy, the purpose of it is to make it relational. So if somebody's leading a company, that's actually making it relational. So that would be, to me, in alignment with what the energy is trying to achieve. So if that energy is animating somebody as bipolar with that temperament, and then they're able to lead a company, that energy was successful. It's not about necessarily that person being successful. That might be a byproduct, and maybe a person at certain states in their consciousness cycle feels I'm personally successful, and then maybe at other times the person feels like I'm doing good for the world, and that's what matters. So we don't necessarily know what the driving force and the intention is behind that person. And the thing too is that energy, when it comes, is so powerful. It has to go somewhere. And if a person is able and in a position in their life already where they can channel it into it being relational in a company, then that's great. That's amazing, because that's going to create channels, places for that energy to go. You know, if a person has an idea and an insight and they're working in a company where they can share and utilize that insight in order for it to be spread in the company to actually make that idea come alive with them not having to do it themselves. Because that's the thing with bipolar too, is a person will have a lot of ideas and insights. So if they have a place to utilize them, they're not going to feel like they're getting squashed and crushed by all the ideas and not able to utilize them. Whereas if they're in a place where they can throw that out there. And the thing too is a lot of the ideas are really good. So if they have a bunch of employees who can mirror back like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, or no, that's not great, and then a person can work on that project that the successful leader thought of, then they're actually bringing out the best in other people and getting them to sort of level up to the level of the idea and the innovation. And it's just, I can see how it would create quite a buzz. So to me, it actually is important for a person to have that. And the trouble is when it happens really young, a person doesn't have that yet. Or if it happens when a person's still in school, then maybe it's a bit difficult to get back on track. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the thing with my ideas, my supposed ideas. I don't have a company yet, but I think I'm going to start one. But even if I do start one, I don't necessarily have employees that can help create some of the ideas that I'm having. But maybe I will one day. But I feel like I have a lot of ideas. And something that I thought of the other day was along the lines of maybe making some videos on my process of whatever it is that I want to create as a business, because maybe it would help more people that have bipolar channel something towards creating a business. Or also, if I talk about a bunch of my ideas, then somebody else can actually start a business on that idea instead of me actually having to have my own company with 1 million employees. What's more exciting to me is actually talking about ideas and harvesting ideas and co-creating some kind of vision. It's almost like having, say, 100 people that experience this type of consciousness, bouncing ideas off each other, and then maybe an idea somebody else resonates more with me doing than my own idea, and vice versa. Really, to me, it's about some kind of open business project, talking about business, even though I'm not really in business yet, and in that way changing business from this like, oh, I got this good idea and I gotta hoard it and plan it for the next 10 years, and then just talking and just thinking together on stuff just to make the world better, because that's really what matters in the end, is the world. And so this is more in alignment with my feelings about this energy, and how this energy is to be made relational, and it's for the world. And It's to create the spontaneous social behavior. So this behavior would be talking openly about my ideas. I'm not saying they're the greatest ideas in the world. I'm just saying this idea is about talking about ideas instead of waiting and sort of creating a business. It's like creating now, like this very second, and not delaying. And I even thought, I'm just going to start a business and I'm not even going to have a plan. And it's just, I'm my business. I don't know what I'm doing. How can I help you or whatever? And just go from there. Like, I do have visions of what I want to create. Actually, I still have this piece of paper, and I'm not going to show you address stuff, but I have his address. And I met this guy named Shane, and he was nearly homeless, and he told me to create the Dream Center, which was a place for homeless people to go to get sober or whatever and restore their dignity and find meaningful work. And I don't know how I would go about that, but I feel like it could be for almost anyone who needs it, even say people that were diagnosed with mental illness. I'd like to see people diagnosed with mental illness who don't really think that's their paradigm to be restored to learning and moving towards their dreams that maybe they saw in some of their altered states of consciousness. And I don't know, I was thinking about this Dream Center project, and I was thinking that besides the whole building aspect, we're each a dream center. We're each a center of dreams. We each have visions. We each have dreams. And so the first step in the Dream Center project for me would just be a dream center myself and have my visions in my heart and bring out the best in people to the best of my ability in the moment, and maybe reconnect them with their dreams and reconnect them with their vision, just being able to see with their heart as opposed to just seeing with their ego eyes, which is mostly lies. So I gotta go find Shane, and maybe I'll do a video trying to find Shane. And I don't know, I'm not sure about that. It's been a while. Because I mentioned before in other videos how when I dissociate and disconnect from reality, I often feel like I'm a homeless man. And so I feel like that's either my next life, or it's a parallel life, or, we're all just one consciousness, and it's just sort of connecting me with another conscious experience, because our brains can tap into anything, especially when our ego is dissociated from. So I often go to that place, and not often, but I've been there a few times where I feel like I'm a homeless man, and I've felt the pain of it only for a brief period of time. It was very intense. And so I feel like that's giving me a reminder. It's like trying to remind me that I am that too, and I'm out there suffering right now, even though I don't feel it most of the time, but sometimes I connect with that suffering, and it's difficult to know what to do. And that's part of embodying my mania, is actually moving towards just being action oriented, and not sitting here thinking about stuff. And I do sit here and think about stuff for sure, but I feel helpless. I feel like I need some sort of vehicle, like a business or something. And I'm thinking of starting my business on January 1st, just so it's a new tax year and it's less to think about for this year. And today is November 4th. So I have about 2 months to just keep making videos, which are more theoretical in a way, and I'm thinking I'll get up to about 100 hours of video, and I don't know, I could put it on YouTube or offer it as some kind of online course. I have no idea, but basically my main thing is making this manic energy relational. It's one thing to think, okay, I have this manic energy, how can I make my life successful? And in doing that, a lot of times, especially with that energy and from that perspective of bipolar, which usually connects one with their heart at some point and some sense of altruism. That's the thing too, like I could get connected with altruism and then devise some kind of scheme in my mind to make me really, really wealthy, yet it's very altruistic. So, and then I would be seen as successful, personally successful, but at the same time my motivation wasn't personal success at all. And that's one of my things, is I keep thinking of more and more stuff, and I'm like, I don't know where to start. And so maybe come January 1st, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to take action. I'm just going to start the business, and I'm just going to do the whole life coach thing and just start being a spontaneous social behavior and a positive social contagion and a cognitive dissonance heart resonance. And I feel that is the success of the energy of mania, is in making it relational. And I'm actually quite interested in the work of Patch Adams. So if I had a chance, I would probably go to one of his classes, because what he does is kind of, it's super altruistic, and I feel like sort of the principles of clowning and improv are in alignment with mania. And I actually don't feel like, oh, I need to study improv and clowning, because when that energy comes, I'm just naturally that way, and I think people are naturally that way. But perhaps having a few different ways to channel that energy might be beneficial, or even just ways to compare it. So a person could practice clowning for 10 years and look kind of like someone that's in mania, perhaps. Or someone could be in mania for 5 minutes for the first time and be like a clown. So some of the human constructs are actually quite congruent with this energy. So, the concept of flow, or maybe the practice of clowning, or practice of improv. Now, I would stink at improv, and I could probably take a class for a long time and learn it, but I feel like in daily life, I am mostly in an improv state, and it's not thinking, oh, I'm improvising, but it's just being in the moment. So in that way, I feel like I kind of have improv in daily life a little bit. Probably could be better with the yes ands and things like that, and that is a lens that could be adopted as well for this purpose. And so, yeah, there's lots there, but that's the bit I'd like to add to what Tom's doing. I think Tom's doing a great thing. It's really important, and I feel like I wouldn't do the same thing he's doing, because that would be pointless. He's already doing it. What I would do is really what I've been talking about in all these videos, until I recently read his article that made me realize that he's actually one of the people out there that really sees that there are benefits to being bipolar. And he even says, I am bipolar, and then people say, oh, you're stigmatizing yourself, but he's saying, well, I see it as a benefit, as a good thing. So for you to say I should be upset about that is actually stigmatizing. So if people were able to learn to function as bipolar, then they wouldn't self-stigmatize, and so they wouldn't get offended if somebody says, you are bipolar versus saying you have bipolar disorder. Because Tom's saying if you say I have bipolar disorder, you're saying you have an illness or you have a disorder or something's wrong. Whereas if you are bipolar and you own it and you can operate as that and use the advantages and work so the disadvantages are very, very, very minimal, then it's not really a bad thing. And I like the way he talks about that. So I would like to go back to saying I am bipolar, when before I've been saying, oh, I'm not sure if I have a mental illness, I'm not sure if I have bipolar disorder, but I could say I am bipolar. I have that up and down perspective, I have that consciousness, and for the most part I have it in order, and so I see it more as an advantage than a disadvantage. There are things sometimes that it's gotten out of control for me, so I haven't been able to get it completely in order, but it's never been, even if I go into the disorder and the awfulness, which I have several times, I'm able to bounce out of it pretty quick. And when I'm able to do that, I soon forget the disadvantage. I move on. I don't live in fear of it, even though it can be pretty bad. And I have had some hints of the disadvantage coming up recently, but I've been able to really be watchful of them and be mindful and talk to people and make sure that I'm able to stay in order, as Tom would say. So he says bipolar in order, and I would say bipolar in order for what? In order for what? I would say in order to connect with one's altruism and make it relational. That energy has to go somewhere. It can't be kept to oneself. And it's so powerful that the more one channels it somewhere, the better. And so I would say Tom is already doing this because he's created this great program called Bipolar in Order, and he's teaching and he's doing so many things with his life. So he's got it in order and he's channeling that energy. He's talking to people, he's helping people. So what I'm saying is what he's doing is part of what I'm saying is a missing piece. I'm not saying it's a missing piece in his program because he might talk about it. I don't know. I don't remember. But once a person is able to maintain their personal safety, one has to realize that one is going to be riding the wave of the universe, as the universe, for the universe. And so the more one can connect with one's altruism, with one's cause, with what one saw, what one got passionate about. So, it's called a mood disorder. Well, you get moody because you get passionate about stuff. And if you get mad about stuff personally, it's because the person's getting in the way of you being passionate about something. And, maybe it's being channeled in ways that aren't healthy, and the thing is, the first time somebody connects with that, it's hard to be in an ordered state. And I don't think it's actually a disordered state. I just think it's not the order of the ego. So that's another thing that is different too. It's bipolar in order. Well, it's the order of the universe. It's an order that is scrambling the ego. So the ego is disorder itself, but we don't realize that. And then this energy of the universe, this order of the universe, comes in and scrambles that up. But yet we're bumping up against the reality of ego thought, which is the collective society that we're usually a prison of, and it's trying to break us out of that prison, and it appears as disorder. So I wouldn't say that the energy of a person, even when they're in the disordered state, is an energy of disorder. It's not. It just appears as disorder because this whole reality is designed in a way that's not congruent with the universe, and the universe energy comes in and shows that. And so that's why a person will be like, I gotta get rid of all this stuff and I gotta buy all this new stuff, and it's trying to create something totally different. A person is in the creative state, and it might not manifest in all these healthy ways because a person will be like, I'm going to just buy everything, and because a person feels so abundant that how can one ever be in a state of lack? Like, all is here and now. So, and that's the truth as the universe would say, but that's not the truth necessarily in the ego reality. So it's a difficult lesson the first time for sure, but one can definitely get in some semblance of order. And that's the part that it's important to get into oneself in order to function in this society that we've created. But I also believe that this energy, part of the point of it is to start to change society. So to only get back into order in order to appease everyone around us and please everyone around us and function again in society, even though our energy is like tearing us apart inside, yet we're able to smile and nod and go about our day. I think that's missing the point a little bit too. That's kind of like building up Herculean strength in order to walk across the street. It's missing the point a little bit. So there's a few things in there that I've said that are different. The energy is the order of the universe. It appears as disorder when one's ego is being blown apart, when one's false structures are being blown apart. It appears as disorder, and it's going to reorder that person's life. And or even if a person falls flat on their face because they're in disorder, if one was just to create one's life again in the exact same disorder, it's going to create the exact same thing, because one in one's life situation was what was the precondition for that to happen, and that's trying to break it apart. It's trying to free the person. So to just plunk oneself down in the same old prison in the same old way and then just try to manage it's good. It's a good point to do, but at the same time it's also about, what is that energy trying to get me to change? What is that energy trying to get me to be in alignment with my own ego and with the society? And I'm saying it's actually really valuable to be able to, control oneself no matter the state one is in. That's very beneficial. But then from that strength, what was it that energy initially wanted you to do? Still go back to what I was trying to create and what I'm going to create, which is harvest your mania. So for me, I was talking about Shane and how I met Shane, and he said, create the dream center. Well, I could be completely readapted and in order in my life and in society as it's designed, comfortable again, managing my states and behaviors, and just again be a cog in the machine. Or I could think, well, now that I'm in order and now that I'm strong and now that I've spent 2 years getting myself able to still behave properly when this energy overcomes me, so I don't rip someone's head off, and that is of no advantage at all. Well, now I can think back to what it was that the universe wants me to do. And even though I'm not having the wonderful reward of high pleasure response, thinking about it or moving towards it, I'm still going to move towards it. I'm still going to create it. I'm still going to do whatever I can do. Those ways that mania was trying to animate me in that universe of the energy, the spontaneous social behaviors, I'm still going to move towards that. I'm going to practice that. I'm not just going to practice making myself feel better and sort of move back and forth in this energy and ride that wave. I'm also going to practice moving with it and moving as it, and not just thinking, oh, I'm getting a bit more energy, so it's time to nip it in the butt. Thinking, I have a bit more energy, so I'm going to go downtown and give sandwiches to the homeless, which is something I would probably do in mania. So what would a manic person do? Can I still do that without that energy? Can I embody that? Can I make that relational? Can I make that energy relational even when I don't have the energy? And I think that's part of the, test in a way, because it's easy to do it when the energy's there. When that huge wave is there, it's easy to do it. It makes us do it. and we are it, and we're enjoying it, and we're in the state of joy by being that and doing that. Now, can we do that still without the energy, without the reward? Do we have to be a salivating dog in order to do that stuff? And I don't think so. So to become in order just to be cozy again defeats the purpose, because the initial wave of energy was anything but cozy, and it was saying, get off your butt and do something. I don't care what it is, do something, because sitting and thinking about something is zero power compared to the infinite power of a simple smile. So here I am sitting on my butt talking about this, but that's why I'm not going to release this until I've done something. That would just be silly. And so I've already experienced the process of being overtaken and animated by the energy, and I was out there doing stuff every day, but it was disordered. So I was in the order, the energy was the order of the universe, but I was disordered in my being able to make it relational and act it out and share it. So back to these people who are successful, they're able to embody it, make it relational, share it. I would bet that they wouldn't say that people with bipolar are like successful chess players. Probably not. I don't think that energy would let us just sit and play chess. It's going to make us go out and relate. And I would think that a lot of the successful leaders are the type that have to relate in some way, and it's that energy, that charisma of the universe that makes them successful and makes people maybe follow them in a certain way, or want to work for them and with them. And it could be even the energy that people could be diagnosed as bipolar if they faltered in some way. But maybe when the energy first came, they were always able to be that and just go with it, and never, like, if you're always channeling it, is it going to destroy you and make you fall? I'm not sure, and that's why I really feel it's important for me to get with the relational program. And I was saying before, when I was first in recovery, I was just having fun and laughing, and I was very relational. I wasn't thinking I'm trying to be altruistic or whatever. I was just being happy, silly, ridiculous, playful, fun, talking, smiling, laughing, and I never had any issues. And then I switched into helping other people and peer support, and I definitely went downhill, and I have had more struggles since. And when I think about it, it just might not be in alignment with that energy. That energy, maybe I had it still when I was in recovery, but I was always making it relational. I was always laughing and having fun with people. And then when I started in the other capacity, I wasn't working with very many people at all, very few, just supporting a few people. So I was in that relational space a lot less. And so I think there's something with that too. People that go into that consciousness were not meant to sit at home and do not anything. Even if we go out and just talk to people and are silly and have fun, we're doing something. And that's why I was talking about random acts of kindness, and how it's a way to embody mania and make that energy relational and invite that energy to come back and fill us. And we're already doing that, and we are actually saying yes to the energy because we're doing what it would want us to do or animate us as, without the reward of the energy being there as that bliss. So it may be there, it might not be there. And do we need it to be there in order to do that?